children, innocent of contributing to the horrors that society has bestowed upon us, it's generally agreed that we should do our best to protect them and try to give them a better world to inhabit, or at least more hope than we have right now. So, if children are the group that American citizens care about the most, what group do they care about the least? Children, a malleable market group that lords of capital love to profit off of until they get in the way of the bottom line with their pesky safety requirements and concerned parents. I mean, they got rid of dodgeball. Kids these days are so... You know, how is a CEO supposed to sell copious amounts of Robux to these little snots and the grown creeps that want to date them when parents keep checking what's going on with their credit card accounts? I mean, sure, kids are great when you need to use the concept of protecting them as a political tool or when you need the value of your stocks and gun manufacturers to increase, but otherwise, they can really get in the way of trying to convince people that there's no need to look into your involvement with your best friend's notorious history of child trafficking, mysterious death, or pedo island, so don't ask about it anymore. So let's look into the way the USA treats its children and see if we can get to the bottom of why this country hates kids so much. But if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm Hellion.Vision, and around these parts, we like to take the fascists and bigots of the world, throw them in our mosh pit, and hit them with the big riffs that melt their little fascist faces. So if that sounds like your idea of a good time, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button with a windmill kick and come shred with the heaviest channel on YouTube. Alright, let's get into this. In the USA, it's incredibly common to hear people use children as a talking point in some political agenda they're trying to push. Conservatives do it all the time when they're trying to push transphobia onto people to distract them from actual crimes. Just think of how often Donald Trump references trans people in sports. He almost brings it up as often as he's brought up his attraction to his teenage daughter in the past. The irony of a man claiming to have the best interest of children in mind while also being the guy who said he's never had the pleasure of going to Epstein Island is surprisingly lost on many people. And while more Republicans are coming around to the thought that,
hey, I think this guy might be kind of a dick.
It's certainly disheartening to think there's still a sea of people who think that this decaying sack of orange meat is an actual human. Perhaps looking at one of his latest bigoted boondoggles aimed at children could change their mind. I mean, we all know Trump is big horny for deportation. It's been one of the linchpins of his presidency. Republicans were pretty eager to see him round up Americans that they considered criminals. By the way, if you live in America, I see you as an American. I don't really give a fuck where everyone is from. None of us are basically from here, and we're all just humans anyway, so what's the big deal? Fuck. But certainly, you're not the kind of ghoulish dickhole who thinks unaccompanied children should be deported back into their country of origin without any contact with their parents, leaving them to their own devices in a potential hub of international human trafficking like an airport, right? Right? Well, this guy does. According to a report by NPR, a federal judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration from expelling hundreds of Guatemalan children who crossed the U.S. border alone. Although the government had not obtained legal permission to remove the children, some of their lawyers said Guatemalan children were already loaded on planes on a tarmac while the judge conducted a hearing about the situation on Sunday. A U.S. attorney confirmed this. The temporary halt, issued Sunday afternoon, allows lawyers 14 more days to discuss the case and prevents any children from being removed during the next 2 weeks. The children the U.S. intended to remove were under the care of the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement. Since 2002, the Department of Health and Human Services has been required by federal law to shelter and care for children who enter the U.S. without parents or guardians. After HHS assumes care of unaccompanied children following their apprehension by other agencies at the border, the minors are typically not allowed to be deported without receiving the benefit of full immigration proceedings. Even in some circumstances where it is possible for unaccompanied children to be reunited with their guardians in their home countries, they must still first undergo a legal process that allows the children to defend themselves and the U.S. government to confirm that the return would be in the best interest of the children, said Becky Woolazin, a senior attorney at the National Center for Youth Law, a nonprofit that's been working on the case with other groups. But this weekend, No one had advance notice that this was happening, Wolosin said, referring to the plan by the U.S. government to deport hundreds of Guatemalan children with little warning. Quote, on a baseline, you want the person on the other end to know when to pick them up, Wolosin said. This was an enormously rushed middle-of-the-night operation. After learning that the U.S. government was planning to quickly remove as many as 600 Guatemalan children under the care of HHS before allowing the children to have their cases heard in court, following reporting on August 29th by CNN, attorneys for the children requested on Sunday morning that a district judge, Justice Sparkle Suknanen, issue a temporary restraining order to prevent the children's removal. During the hearing, the Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Department of Justice's Office of Immigration Litigation, Drew Ensign, told Justice Suknanen that planes containing Guatemalan children were on the ground ready for takeoff, and that one of them might have already taken off and turned back around. Ensign also told Justice Suknanen, a Biden appointee, that the Guatemalan government had requested the return of the children to their home country, and that all the children's parents had requested their removal from the U.S. NPR asked the government of Guatemala to comment, but did not immediately hear back. The Department of Justice did not immediately respond to a request for comment from NPR, so we don't know if that's actually what the Guatemalan government said. Lawyers for some of the children contested that their clients' guardians were all aware and in agreement with the plans to send minors to Guatemala. In a document filed on August 31st, attorneys at the National Immigration Law Center said the U.S. did not notify the children ahead of time that they were going to be removed, and that doing so would deprive them of their legal right to pursue asylum in the U.S. By sending the children to Guatemala as planned, the U.S. government could be putting the children at risk of abuse, neglect, persecution, or torture, attorneys for the children wrote in a petition filed on Sunday. Wolosin said it was a relief that Justice Suknanen temporarily prevented the removal of the children of Guatemala. Quote, the government is trying to spin this as child protection, but it's not. It's child abuse, said Wolosin. It wasn't orderly. It skipped all of the procedural protections. In a statement issued on Sunday evening, the National Immigration Law Center said they intend to continue fighting to protect the Guatemalan children. Quote, in the dead of night on a holiday weekend, the Trump administration ripped vulnerable, frightened children from their beds and attempted to return them to danger in Guatemala, said Efrain Olivares, a lead attorney at the National Immigration Law Center. We are heartened the court prevented this injustice from occurring before hundreds of children suffered irreparable harm. So to summarize that, Trump was willing to send these kids to Guatemala, and even though Ensign is saying, the parents knew and the Guatemalan government asked for them back, there's no confirmation on if that's actually the case. And lawyers for a lot of these kids are saying that's not the case at all. As a matter of fact, many of these kids didn't even know that this was going to happen. So dropping them off at an airport in Guatemala with nobody to pick them up really isn't showing that you care about children at all. But look, the reality is you don't need to go all the way to the executive branch to find America's exploitation of children on full display. It can happen right in the home of a perfectly loving parent if they're not well enough informed on the digital realm of the internet. You may have heard of the recent comedy of errors around the predator curation game Roblox. In a nutshell, they've had a problem for years with child predators using their game creation tools to create games aimed at kids that literally involve having restroom rendezvous with them. And while all of this happens in virtual spaces, and the idea of these Playmobil Roblox things being a vehicle for any kind of sexual interaction may seem ridiculous, the interactions that happen on the platform have often led to things on other platforms. Grooming, lewd images, all of these things can go down off-platform or even in-platform. Things don't even have to go that far for a kid to experience something that may be traumatic. Predators are more than happy to do harassment and simulated roleplay right there in the open when you log into a world in the game. What many parents think is an innocent game to keep their kids safely occupied is actually an open door for creeps to interact with their kids. And this led to vigilantes like streamer Schlep to take protecting the platform they love into their own hands. And while a few vigilantes won't solve a systemic problem like predators having easy access to kids, we can all agree that it's a net positive that Schlep got a handful of these gross predators arrested so they could be removed from the kids, right? Right? Of course not. Those predators have money, and that Schlepp fellow was getting the wallets locked up. So the executives at Roblox banned Schlepp. They had a weird Zoom call saying how dangerous vigilantes are, and this is just speculation, but they probably hired all the predators. That being said, of course the stock took a little hit there, but don't worry, it's higher than it was before now, and CEOs and board members can sleep easy knowing that their souls may be hollow, but their wallets will certainly be fat. That's right, not even children are safe from the pulverizing oppression of capitalism. So much so that the National Center on Sexual Exploitation has an annual campaign called the Dirty Dozen List, calling out 12 mainstream entities for facilitating, enabling, and even profiting from sexual abuse and exploitation. The campaign has yielded major victories at Google, Netflix, TikTok, Hilton Worldwide, Verizon, Walmart, the U.S. Department of Defense, and many more. 2024's list was as follows. Apple. They say Apple's record is rotten when it comes to child protection. This big tech titan refuses to detect child abuse material, hosts dangerous apps with deceptive age ratings and descriptions, and won't default safety features for teens. Cash App. Do more with your money shouldn't apply to buying sex and paying for abusive content. This peer-to-peer payment app appeals to pimps, predators, and pedophiles looking for a covert way to conduct criminal activity. Communications Decency Act Section 230. The greatest enabler of online sexual exploitation, misinterpretations of Communications Decency Act Section 230 grant big tech blanket immunity for any and all types of abuse and exploitation they facilitate. Until we amend CDA 230, corporations can't be held accountable. Cloudflare. Providing a platform for sex buyers, traffickers, and deepfakers, Cloudflare says it wants to build a better internet, so why does it provide service to some of the most prolific prostitution forums and deepfake sites? Discord. Discord's a hotspot for dangerous interactions and deepfakes. This platform is popular with predators seeking to groom kids and with creeps looking to create, trade, or find sexually abusive content of children and unsuspecting adults. LinkedIn. The world's largest professional network is an amateur when it comes to stemming sexual exploitation. LinkedIn legitimizes Pornhub and other exploitative enterprises by providing them a platform, overlooks users promoting deepfake pornography tools, and fails to stop rampant sexual harassment against women. Meta. Moving fast and making money at all costs leaves children to pay the price. Meta's launch of end-to-end encryption, open-sourced AI, and virtual reality are unleashing new worlds of exploitation, while its platforms like Instagram continue to rank among the most dangerous for kids. Microsoft's GitHub. Microsoft's GitHub is the global hub for creating sexually exploited AI tech. The vast majority of deepfakes, nudify apps, and AI-generated abuse content originate on this platform owned by the world's richest company. Reddit. Reddit is riddled with sexploitation. CSAM, sex trafficking, and image-based sexual abuse hide in plain sight among endless pornography subreddits allowed on this platform. Content which will be further monetized now that Reddit is public. Roblox. Roblox treats child protection like a game. Among the avatars, blocks, and buildings, kids are exposed to predators, rape-themed games, and age-inappropriate content like sex parties. Spotify. Music porn for everyone. Sexually explicit images, sadistic content, and networks trading CSAM on its platform proved Spotify is out of tune with basic child safety measures and moderation practices. Telegram. Known as the dark web alternative, Telegram unleashes a new era of exploitation. Messaging app Telegram serves as a safe haven for criminal communities across the globe. Torture rings, sextortion gangs, deepfake bots, and more all thrive on an alarming scale. And on the watch list, which is where they place companies who have made some changes but still need to do more to improve their platforms, they've put Snapchat, where a child's life can change forever in a snap. Content on Snapchat may be fleeting, but the impact of sextortion, grooming, and child sex abuse can last a lifetime. This app is dangerous by its very design. Now look, if all of that isn't enough for you to be convinced that the USA, and specifically executives that maintain positions of power and board members, don't care about the welfare of our kids, maybe the actions they take can convince you. Social media executives are currently looking to sue Denver, Colorado over a law that would require them to warn users about the potential dangers of their platforms. A simple warning label would be displayed to Coloradans under the age of 18 who have used the social media services for more than an hour over a 24-hour period, or if the user is online overnight. The notice must be displayed every 30 minutes. As reported on by the Denver Post, a coalition of tech companies sued the state Thursday, asking a federal judge to strike down a law requiring them to warn young users about the impacts of using their social media products. The suit argues the law violates the First Amendment. It was filed in U.S. District Court in Denver by NetChoice, a trade group that includes prominent companies like Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, X, which is just Twitter, Google, and Reddit. The law it seeks to invalidate was passed last year as House Bill 1136 with bipartisan support. The social media companies won't feel its requirements, which they called an unconstitutional power grab, until January 1st when it takes effect. The law will require social media sites and apps to create a function or a pop-up that warns young users about the potential impacts of using social media on their brain development and their physical and mental health. The companies are asking a judge to rule that the law amounts to the government forcing them to speak in a specific manner. They contend the requirements of the legislation are too vague to implement. Quote, "At its core, this case is about one thing: compelled speech. Colorado is trying to force private websites to act as a mouthpiece for its preferred message," Paul Task, the co-director of NetChoice Litigation Center, said in a statement. "The state is free to share its view on any topic it wishes, but it cannot force private businesses to speak for it." Fuck you, you ghoul. Sorry, that's just me. The suit was filed against Attorney General Phil Weiser. Spokesman Lawrence Pacheco declined to comment on ongoing litigation. The companies allege that the law requires them to share controversial warnings about the effects of social media, and they argue research is still emerging about whether the apps are harmful. The lawsuit points to a 2023 advisory from the U.S. Surgeon General stating that more research is needed to fully understand the impact of social media. It also notes that the advisory lists potential benefits from social media use. Lawmakers had leaned on that federal advisory when drafting the legislation. But the advisory goes on to say that the current body of evidence indicates that while social media may have benefits for some children and adolescents, there are ample indicators that social media can also have a profound risk of harm to the mental health and well-being of children and adolescents. At this time, we do not yet have enough evidence to determine if social media is sufficiently safe for children and adolescents. The Biden administration's Surgeon General at the time, Dr. Vivek H. Murthy, later called for a warning label to be placed on social media platforms. Colorado has had its own share of social media dust-ups. In April, lawmakers passed new bipartisan social media regulations requiring platforms to better police themselves and to ban users who violate their terms of service or run afoul of state law. Governor Jared Polis vetoed that bill. The state Senate then voted to override the veto, but lawmakers in the House declined to pursue the same vote there, citing flagging support. Look, it's so gross, man. They really don't care about protecting kids at all. A simple warning label popping up every 30 minutes is really nothing. It would not affect their bottom line. And I mean, we've seen plenty of research. We know the impact of social media on kids, especially those of us who grew up with social media, right? I mean, we know that it creates all sorts of shit. It makes life hard in so many ways. Yes, the freedom of information is great. Our ability to communicate is amazing, but it doesn't necessarily need to be something that is given to children without any type of restriction or moderation. Capitalism has broken our brains to the point where the bottom line is more important to CEOs and lords of capital than the well-being of average citizens. And this includes children. Every time a school shooting happens, stocks and guns gain value as opposed to decreasing as you might think. Digital spaces like Roblox and VR chat have become hunting grounds for predators, and CEOs have prioritized profit over safety for children. This isn't a flaw in capitalism, though. It's a feature. Children are viewed as consumers by corporation, fodder for the money machine, easy targets. And the reality is we barely scratched the surface here. We didn't really cover the school shootings, the Epstein shit, or the fact that the US government has taken our tax dollars to fund the genocide of Palestinian children. The only people who will care for our children are ourselves and the communities we help build. We can't count on the government as we know it to help them. It's stacked to the gills with predators anyway. If the president is saying something is being done to help children, trust that it's the opposite. It isn't the truth. He's not even someone who should be allowed near kids. And do your research to keep your kids and the kids in your family safe. The most important mission humanity has is to try to make things better for the next generation so that maybe they have a chance of living in a country that doesn't view them as an easy target of manipulation. We need to make our communities, our villages, as strong as possible. Because as corny as it may sound, it really does take a village to help our children.
I'm so excited to host this briefing today in honor of National Bring Your Kids to Work Day. My job at the White House is to communicate the president's message. We are here to make America great again, and we live in the best country in the history of the world.
You want to know if Donald Trump likes to give hugs?
I have seen him give many hugs to children. How many people has he fired? We have not had anyone fired. What's the state of the border?
Civil rights groups say last week's deportations included 3 American children, all U.S. citizens. One of them is battling cancer. Parenting 101.
And by the way, I never went to the island, and Bill Clinton went there supposedly 28 times. I never went to the island, but Larry Summers, I hear, went there. He was the head of Harvard. I never had the privilege of going to his island.